It was a day similar to this. It was brisk, a bit cold, sun was shining. At the home farm, walked back to the ponds. And the ponds were natural ponds that are sort of in a valley, an acre or more each. And when I went between the two ponds, there's bush on all sides. Everything was silent. You could not hear a bird. You couldn't hear chainsaws or planes or vehicles or tractors. What you could hear, though, was the wings of insects. Everything was silent. At that point, I thank God, I worship God for the beauty of his creation and for all that he's done for us. But there's another way to worship God. Some people think that you can only worship God within creation itself. But they are so wrong. Because David said, this one thing I ask. One thing I ask, this I seek. That I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon his beauty and to seek him in his temple. Worship can be done anywhere, but God draws very, very close to his people as they worship corporately in the sanctuary that's been dedicated to him. But what is worship all about? Let's look at it in 4 ways. The object of worship. And you say, well, that's God. And it is. But sometimes we come to worship, we're tired, or we're distracted, and we don't realize that we're here to worship God. And the God that we worship is the one who has created us. He is self-sufficient and he's independent, and he has life within himself, and he's the triune God. One God, yet 3 persons, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And he's a God full of love and compassion, faithfulness. He's a holy God. He's a perfect God. He's a just God. And he's a wise God. And that's who we come to worship. What's our motivation for worship? What should it be? Well, I'm used to going to church on Sunday, so I guess I'll plod down to the church today. Or you remember your parents maybe saying you have to go to church. Our motivation isn't supposed to be that way. Let's look at David. And what did David do? Where was David? Where did he find himself? David found himself in trouble. He had enemies. They were out to get him. He had been deceived by friends. And he longed. He longed to go into the house of God, to gaze on his beauty. He wanted to come to see God. He had an expectation that when we come to worship, that we meet with God, that God's Holy Spirit will be here and falling upon us and being present with us. So what's a desire of worship? What should be our desire? Why do we come? Is it just to worship God? And remember that word worship is a compound word. It's 2 words put together. And it means giving God his true worth. Is that why we come? It is. But there's something before that. Remember, David talks that he wants to seek God. He wants to gaze upon the beauty of God. And what's that beauty of God that he wants to gaze on? Well, it's his power, his presence, his love, his compassion, his holiness, his greatness, his awesomeness. And then we want to gaze upon the love of God that is found in Jesus Christ. We're not worthy to come into his presence. We're not worthy of God's grace. We were lost. We couldn't see because we were in darkness the glory of our God. And our desire is to know him better. When we come into the sanctuary, we come to the one who has living water. We come to the one who serves us the bread of heaven. First of all, we come to receive from our God what he has for us. And after he begins to work in our lives and we begin to remember him again, that's when our praise comes. Because we've looked upon God and we see what he's done, and there's love that flows out of our hearts from the love that he's given us, and there's joy because we know we have new life, and there's peace because we know that we are at peace with him, and no one can separate us from his love. So what's the duration of our worship? Is it just here? No, not at all. God is fully present everywhere. We can worship him in creation. We can worship him at work. We can worship him when we wake up in the middle of the night. We can worship him at any time. He's there. And he's saying, when you begin your day, begin it with me, with prayer and worship. During the day, worship me. Be aware of my presence. End your day with me in prayer. And as you do, I will draw close to you, and I will fill you with my love, my peace, my joy, and my presence.